There you go. So we'll be running the session, and then at the end of the session, there'll be a period for questions, and you can be posting questions in the chat and also introduce yourself, where you're from, if you'd like to, in the chat as well. So my name's Kelly Babcock. Since 2023, I've been the AAO's Archeion coordinator for our Ontario AtoM portal Archeion, and Archeion has been running on AtoM since 2011, which is a really long, great length of time to be using a single platform. And for that last over a decade, our AtoM hosting company has been Artefactual Systems. And we're lucky enough to have some of the folks from Artefactual Systems who maintain and have expertise in AtoM here with us today, Sarah Romkey and Raven Germain. And we're very grateful that they're joining us. I've learned a lot from Sarah over the years and all of her community presentations, and Raven has been a huge support for me as Archeion coordinator since last summer. So I'm going to introduce them, and then I'll pass it on to them to get started. So Sarah Romkey is the head of hosting and software as a service products for Artefactual Systems. An archivist by training, Sarah graduated from the iSchool at UBC in 2008 with a dual master's in archival studies and library and information studies. Raven Germain is a systems archivist with Artefactual Systems, assisting with hosted, AtoM, and Archivematica product development, support, and service management and delivery. She holds a Master of Library and Information Studies from the University of Alberta. So welcome, Raven and Sarah. We're excited to see your session today.
All right, welcome everybody. My name is Raven, like Kelly just said. And just to start us off, I am based in Edmonton, Alberta, and I'd like to acknowledge that I'm located within Treaty 6 territory, which is also the homeland of the Métis Nation Region 4, and it's the traditional gathering place for diverse Indigenous peoples, including the Cree, Blackfoot, Métis, Nakota Sioux, Dene, Anishinaabe, and many, many others. And I'm joined today by my colleague, Sarah.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for the introduction. I'm Sarah Romkey. I'm located in Lunenburg, Nova Scotia, which is in Mi'kma'ki, the traditional and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq.
Right, so to start us off today, here's a quick agenda of what we'll be covering. We'll start with a brief refresher of AtoM generally, in which I'll also go over some possible institutional profile customizations in AtoM. Sarah will then review the various entity types that make up AtoM's architecture, and also show you how to add, edit, and delete content manually. I'll review how to browse and search effectively within AtoM after that. And then finally, we'll end the session by covering a few tips and tricks for using AtoM. There should be time for some Q&A at the very end of the session, but please feel free to drop questions into the chat throughout the presentation as we go, and we'll do our best to answer them as they come up. Okay, so let's kick things off with a brief introduction to AtoM. So AtoM, as I'm sure many of you know already, is short for Access to Memory, and it's a web-based open source application for standards-based archival description and access in a multilingual, multi-repository environment. Now that can be kind of a mouthful, so let's break down what some of these concepts actually mean. So AtoM is web-based, meaning that all user interactions with the system, such as add, view, search, edit, and delete actions, for example, take place through a web browser, and you don't need to download any software to your computer. Anyone with access to a browser like Chrome, Firefox, Safari, or whatever your preference might be, and an internet connection has access to all the features and functionality of the AtoM application. It is also open source, so the underlying AtoM code is itself open source with the source code freely available for use or modification as users or other developers see fit under the AGPL version 3 license. And this license makes the source code available for users and enables collaboration between developers of web services and other network software. AtoM is also built with the open source tools rather than proprietary tools or closed source tools. And then, of course, the application is software. AtoM is also standards-based. It was originally built with support from the International Council on Archives to encourage broader international standards adoption. We've built standards compliance into the core of AtoM and offer easy-to-use web-based edit templates that conform to a wide variety of international and national standards so that your data is standards compliant and also interoperable. Access, descriptions, digital objects, and other data are presented online in a clear, accessible way. AtoM is also multilingual and supports translations of both content and user interface elements so that it can be used in a multilingual catalog. And AtoM, finally, is multi-repository, meaning that, like Archeion, it can be used as a portal site, content aggregator, or union catalog to provide access to content from multiple institutions at once. So as mentioned in this definition, AtoM uses standards-based descriptions. AtoM has user-friendly content standard edit templates to implement both international standards for archival description, like ISAD, and also national standards, like Rules for Archival Description, or RAD, and Describing Archives, a Content Standard, or DACS. Some other standards upon which AtoM was built include Dublin Core and the Metadata Object Description Schema, or MODS. As an institution, you can choose a template and then input descriptive data accordingly through the user interface. You can also set which standard the data will be displayed in, and then users can view data in that standard, or they can crosswalk it to another standard if they want. So in a multi-repository system in AtoM, archival descriptions can be linked to archival institutions, and the holdings of an institution can be browsed. On related archival description view pages, the institution's name and logo will appear as hyperlinks to the archival institutional record. And similarly, an archival institution page will list its holdings as hyperlinks to the related archival descriptions. So you can kind of see how everything is interconnected to facilitate discovery and access. Some information that you might find it useful to include on an institutional page are the name of your archival institution, the full address of the physical location, contact information such as the phone number, email address, or website, and maybe the opening hours and how to physically access the archives if it's open to the public. To improve browsing in a multi-repository system and to enhance the information available to end users about your institution, you can also add multiple access points if you want. These access points become facets available during searching and browsing to help users narrow down their search, and they include archive type, the geographic region and subregion, locality, and thematic area. The archive type, geographic region, and locality, or the city, are automatically populated as access points based on the data that you enter into the contact information fields, which I'll show you in a few minutes. And the geographic subregion and thematic area facets, on the other hand, must be manually added in the access points area of the edit page. And then just remember to make sure that all of your institutional page info is kept up to date, especially if any of your contact or website information changes. Also remember that any theming customizations are also kept up to date, like your custom logo. Speaking of logos, institutional pages can also be themed in AtoM. So you can add a custom logo and custom banner. You can change the background color, add a Google map if you want, and also add a custom description for your institution. To this custom description, you can add custom HTML and inline CSS. And you can use this section to display any important information like holiday closures. You can list tips and tricks for searching the institution's holdings. We've seen folks embed YouTube videos or locally hosted images, like we can see Carlton has done on the screenshot to the right. And you can also add shortcuts to custom searches, which can be especially useful in a multi-repository system. So I'll quickly show you a bit of a demo of what this could look like. So I have here open the Archeion AtoM website, and I'm on the institutional profile for Guelph Public Library Archives. We like to highlight Guelph as an example of an archival institution that has extensively customized their institutional page. We can see at the top that they've added a custom logo in the top left, and they've also added a banner here with a lovely photo of their physical archive. If we scroll down, we can see in this white area here that they've added some contact information, including their physical address, phone number, email address, and also a link to their website. They've also listed their institution type as library. And then underneath the banner here at the top, this is where they've utilized the custom description option to do a couple of different things. The first is that they've highlighted the scrolling text box here for their copyright and conditions of use for digital images. They've also added some contextual quick links up here and also down here for saved searches. For example, if we click on this link here that says go to GPL Archives digital image search, we're taken to a list of search results that have some preset filters in place. So we can see at the top here via these filter tags that these results are limited to only those from Guelph Public Library archives. We can also see that it's limited to only those results with digital objects. So linking saved searches that you've set up can be a really good way to help the public users find what they're looking for within your archive specifically. And then lastly, I'll just highlight this green background color that they've chosen. Like other theming customizations, setting a background color is completely optional. One of the things that I find neat about this option is that it can help with institutional branding. You might choose a color that matches your library or archive colors, for example. And then also, if you click into any of the institution's holdings, which are on the left here, you can see that the background color, in addition to the logo, carries over to all of their holdings. So it really highlights the connection between the archival description and the overarching institution even more. So I'll now jump into my own AtoM, which I have open to the right here, to quickly show you how you can edit an archival description. So this is a demo institutional page that I created for today. You can see that I've already made some customizations. I've added a logo to the left and I've added a banner. I've also embedded a YouTube video here on how to use AtoM. And if I scroll down all the way to the bottom here, you can see that I've also added some thematic area points as access points. So once you are logged in, you can edit your institutional profile via this menu here at the bottom. Let me just quickly log in. I see that it logged me out. All right, perfect. So once you're logged in, you can edit your institutional profile via this menu at the bottom of the page. Where did I go? Give me 1 second. Search. Here I am. Okay, so you have this menu bar at the very bottom. To edit your institutional theme, you can click this Edit Theme button to the very right. So if I wanted to change the background color now, I could click on this toggle here and I could change it to anything that I want. This page is also where you'll go if you want to change your banner and custom logo. And it's also where you'll go if you want to edit the custom description. So you would just expand the box that says page content here. And you can see here in this custom description text box that I've already added some content, including some HTML markup. So these pound symbols, for example, mean that I've added some headers, and double asterisk means that you can bold text on your page. So go ahead and click Save. And we can see that it's changed the background color. And then to edit the repository itself, so that's this information that you see in this white text box, you can just click the other edit button on the very left. In this identity area at the top, you can add an identifier for your institution. You can add the authorized form of name. And you can also add the institution type, which will become an access point. So I've just added library here. The field is autocomplete, so you can begin typing to narrow down and find what you want, and then you can just select from the dropdown. Under the contact area dropdown menu here, this is where you can include all of that good contact information about your institution, including its physical address. So you can add a new one, or you can add the edit button if you want to edit existing information, and it will just pull up this dialog box here. Then to add the physical location details, you can just go to the second tab and fill everything in. And then finally, in this access points area at the very bottom, this is where you can fill in that this thematic area field. This is also autocomplete. So you can start typing to select something. And then it's also where you can add the geographic subregion. So for example, I could type Central Alberta if I wanted to kind of make it clear that this repository was within Central Alberta and had content related to that. And that will also become an access point. And then when you're ready, you can hit save at the very bottom to view all of your new changes on your institutional record. So that was a very quick look at what an institutional page looks like, how you can theme it, and how you can add some basic information about it. I'll stop sharing now and pass the baton over to Sarah to talk about entity types.
Thanks, Raven. Just share my screen here. All right, everyone can see that?
Yep.
Perfect, great, okay. So I'm going to talk first through slides about AtoM's entity types, and they're represented in this diagram. And unless you're like a systems geek like I am, this probably looks a touch complicated, and it is, and it's more than you really need to know in terms of how to use AtoM. But I do think it's kind of interesting to know how the data all relates to each other in the background, and like what's really kind of happening under the hood. So we'll go through some of these that are the most pertinent to most archivists, at least from our experience, and certainly from what we assume is the most relevant information for you all as users of Archeion. So the first step, the first entity to talk about is the archival material, or in archival speak, we often say archival descriptions, or sometimes throughout systems documentation, you might see information object or something like that, a little bit more systems speak. So this is obviously, as you all know, the descriptions of your holdings. So this is your actual archival descriptions describing what it is that you have in your archives that you want people to know about. In AtoM terms, this entity is the same thing, whatever level of description that you're describing. So some of your levels of descriptions may be actual physical things like a photograph. So that's like an item, it's part of a collection. The collection is more of an intellectual construct, a collection of things with some descriptive metadata about it. AtoM doesn't differentiate between which things are that kind of construct and which things are an actual physical thing. It does, however, understand hierarchy. So it will do description in the way that we expect as archivists to be able to sort of describe from the broad to the specific. And we'll have some examples of that as we talk about data entry and how descriptions relate to each other and what's all possible there. So going back to what Raven was saying about AtoM really having roots in archival standards and promoting archival standards, archival material can be described using ISAD, RAD, DAX, mods, or Dublin Core. Your AtoM site will have a default template set. So for Archeion, it's set as RAD. Of course, the rules for archival description because you're Canadian institutions. But if you want to view your descriptions in a different template, you can do that. And I believe that's one of the tips and tricks that Raven will show you later. Archival descriptions or archival material as an entity has a one-to-one relationship between the description and a digital object. So you obviously do not have to have a digital object attached to every description, but you can have one and only one. So what that means is if you have, say, a file full of photographs and you want to put a scan of each of those photographs into Archeion, into your AtoM site. You can do that even if you don't have a lot of description for each item. Maybe you don't have the time or the resources. It's been a long time, but I've been a collections archivist. I know what it's like to have constrained time in order to describe your collections. We don't describe everything necessarily in great detail at the item level, right? So AtoM does require you to have an item record for it, but it can be a stub. It can have just an identifier or just a title, something just to sort of be a placeholder for that digital object. And maybe there will come a time where you go back and fill out more descriptive elements, and maybe there won't be, and that's okay too. From AtoM's point of view, it doesn't matter. It just needs that one-to-one relationship if you want to attach a digital object to something. And we'll again look at some examples of doing that. The actor is the people, corporations, organizations, or families related to your archival descriptions. And that relationship can be one of creation or collection. So the person or the organization or the family that had responsibility for creating the material or putting it together and donating it to the archives or whatever can also be the subject of the material. So it's about something, or it can be a rights holder as well. And we'll talk about rights in a couple of minutes. I have to spell out on the slide for myself the acronym for this standard because I never remember exactly what it is. It's ISAR CPF, so the International Standard for Archival Authority Record for Corporate Bodies, Persons, and Families is the standard that this entity follows in AtoM. It's an ICA standard. It's as far as we're aware, kind of it's the only standard we've ever been asked to implement in AtoM for this particular entity type, I guess. I'm sure there's many other ways in other kind of information domains of describing people and corporations and families, but this is the one that AtoM uses. It's part of its ICA roots in terms of the standard promotion that AtoM does. Next is archival institutions, which you just took a really great look with Raven through archival institution records and what those look like. So this is obviously the collecting body preserving the archival material. This is who you are likely representing as you log into Archeion and put descriptions in. It's also a type of actor. In terms of the entity types and how they all relate to each other. And this is another long acronym. The International Standard for Describing Institutions with Archival Holdings is the standard that's being used there. So if you've ever looked at your institutional page and gone to edit it and looked at all of those fields and so on and wondered how did they come up with exactly these fields, that's the answer. It's to be compliant with that standard. Next is right statements, and this a right statement is language that restricts the usage of the archival materials. So that could be based on copyright or legislation, privacy, all kinds of institutional policy, many different reasons. Rights can often be captured in your archival description standard in a sort of a brief way, but as a separate entity in AtoM, they're modeled after premise, which is preservation metadata implementation strategies. This is a metadata schema that's used more in digital preservation than it is in archival description, but it is quite useful for the purpose of describing rights. And in AtoM, if you use premise right statements, you can make them actionable in some senses. So you can have it so that certain types of copyright statements will allow or disallow the viewing of digital objects, for example. These, however, are settings that are set across the entire AtoM installation. So it's something that you would need to be coordinated as a group. It's not something that you can do institution by institution differently throughout Archeion. Terms. So terms are anything contained in a taxonomy or a controlled vocabulary. There's many of these in AtoM. Typically subjects, places, and functions are sort of the most commonly used ones by archivists in terms of like what you're using and editing. But I do have it open in this AtoM tab just to give you a sense of all of the taxonomies. They're really throughout AtoM. Sometimes they have to do with a particular um, domain area. So like a copyright status taxonomy or a DAX notes, um, th- uh, different things related to specific standards that are used within AtoM are all here as well. Like I say, the most commonly ones that you'll be interacting with are probably subjects, places, and functions. And I'll show you how you can interact with those directly as you're entering your archival descriptions, and that you don't necessarily have to go into the taxonomy itself in order to use it, add to it, and interact with it. And finally, there are others. If we go just quickly back to that diagram, as you can see, there's lots on here, not going into detail about many of them, but accessions and donors are two that might be related to your work if you use your own installation of AtoM, but in most multi-repository settings, we wouldn't necessarily recommend using the accessions module. And I believe in Archeion, it's sort of hidden from view so that you're not using it because typically you're not wanting to there's maybe some privacy concerns with sharing accession records between institutions and so on, and same with your donor information. Rights holders is a type of entity, as I mentioned, a type of actor. Functions, so that's another area where there's an international standard at play there to describe what functions an organization is responsible for. That may be part of your authority records. Events, which is the actions that are undertaken that sometimes result in records creation, for example. And finally, taxonomies themselves, which are just sort of the holders of those terms. So now we'll talk about manual data entry a bit and get into a little bit of a demonstration. So for many AtoM users, data entry really begins at creating description records, where I'm today kind of leaping to the assumption that you already have an institution record. Raven covered them quite well, but I won't be showing how to create a new institution. And it's something that I would assume in a multi-repository environment, you would want to coordinate with the Archeion coordinator. So we'll jump right from, you have an institution to your describing archival materials. So as I mentioned, the description record templates are based on a standard. So the standard that you will have displayed by default is RAD, but there are others, and there are ways that you can change your just one description so that you can at least view it in another template if that's relevant to you for some reason. Maybe parts of your organization uses mods or Dublin Core and you want to be able to see your records in that way as well. You can do that within AtoM because it's all sort of translated for you in the background. You don't have to recreate the record in another standard. You can have your descriptions visible to the public by publishing them, or you can keep them hidden from view by keeping them in draft mode until you're ready to make it live to the world. Read, write, and delete capabilities can be limited to specific users, and that's a sort of a group and permission setting that's set across the entire AtoM installation. So for Archeion, I'm not sure exactly what your group permissions are set up like, but that's something that Kelly coordinates, I assume, is part of managing users, would be part of Kelly's job. The description will link out to authority records, the repository records, subject and places, etc., so that you can make use of that controlled vocabulary and link out to other things. And it also becomes an exploration method for your researchers. So when they're on they found your way their way to a description from your holdings, they can find their way to your repository and see all of your holdings, or they can find their way to the geography that that description relates to and see everything about that geographic region or so on. And as I mentioned, they can have a digital object attached, one per record, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Creator and repository inheritance is something that's quite useful in AtoM, and we would encourage you to make use of it and not recreate it throughout the levels of description. So there's no need to add creators or repositories at lower levels of description. AtoM inherits these automatically. So if you create a full level description and it has the repository is, well, let's use the example right here on the screenshot, the City of Greater Sudbury Archives, and the creator is Israel Irving Steinberg. That is every child that's created for that font or that collection is going to have that information linked to it. You don't need to recreate it each time. And it's actually not good to recreate it each time. You can end up with sort of crowded descriptions, crowded authority records with two links that are all like more or less to the same thing. And it makes it a little bit less usable for your users. And if there's custom permissions applied to your database, that disallows editing from people from other institutions, editing your records and so on, it can really kind of clutter things up. So we recommend taking advantage of that feature of AtoM and letting it do the work of cascading the repository and the creator down the levels of description. And now we'll get into a demonstration. So I'm on the same AtoM site that Raven was on earlier. And Raven has a test institution, and so do I. So if I go to archival institutions, I can find my institution that I created yesterday called the Lunenburg Pet Collective. So you're going to learn about my pets, which I think is a very typical demonstration topic. So I hope that that pleases you. And if you want to substitute my pets with your own pets, you can do that in your mind. So at the Lunenburg Pet Collective, we currently have one result, which is the dog collection. So I created this yesterday. So here is the dog collection. But I also have, in addition to a dog, I have a rabbit. So I can create a new description for and create a rabbit collection as well. So to do that, I can do that in a couple of different places. I can do that from the institutional page. I can add a description from here. I can also do it from where, no matter where I am in the AtoM site, I can go back to the home page. I can be anywhere. I can add a new description here in the add menu. So I'll add an archival description. And this is set to use the RAD template because that's the one that we assume that you're all most familiar with, and it's the one that Archeion uses. So in my title area, I'm going to say that it's called the Rabbit Collection. And I don't, I guess what I'm actually going to put here is a photograph. So I guess I could use a general material designation if that's something you use at your institution. You'll notice here that some fields have an asterisk. That is letting you know that the standard considers that to be mandatory. AtoM, however, does not enforce that. So if you do, I mean, it's a good idea to have a title. You're going to need to have either a title or an identifier to create a record. Everything else is technically speaking optional in AtoM. So you can, it's very common, I know in archival practice to have a source of the title proper. So you might, a title is based on the content of the collection or something along those lines. That's not a required element. It does not have an asterisk. Level of description is required by RAD, but again, if I wanted to skip this, I could. AtoM would allow me, but I'll put it in because it troubles me to not have the level of description. Something that you can do here is you can add a basic child level while you're adding your parent level. So this can be quite helpful. You can add a bunch of children. So I have something that I'll add. I'll just use the number 1 as the identifier. I'm going to have an item, and the title is going to be Jet, because that's the name of the rabbit that we're going to see a picture of in a moment. The date is, it is in fact 2023. At some point in 2023, I took the picture. I could figure out exactly which date and put the more precise date there, but that's fine for me for now. Here's the repository. So if I start typing, it's going to come up with the results from its list of existing repositories. So I don't have to type in the whole thing. And in fact, again, this is a thing where it's kind of better if you don't. You want it to link to the existing repository. So I'm going to click on the Lunenburg Pet Collective. I'm going to give this an identifier. I'm going to call it pets2 because I used pets1 to make my dog collection yesterday. And then it goes through the whole RAD, all of the areas of description. So I know some of these are more commonly used than others. Dates of creation area is very commonly used. So I'll use this as one of my examples. So I'm going to start typing the actor name, who is myself. And there I am. There I am twice, which probably means I did something bad and accidentally made a second authority record for myself. So I'll just choose one for now and I can clean that up later, maybe. I did in fact create these things, and I did it in the last year. If you have more precise dates or if you have a range of dates, you can do that as well. The idea here is that you're meant to be compliant with RAD. So AtoM isn't necessarily going to correct your work. So if you put something that's not a date here, it's not necessarily going to throw you an error or something, but it tries to make it as easy as possible for you to have something kind of sensible there. So this isn't the truth, but suppose I created these photographs between the years of 2022 and 2023, it puts the start and end dates in appropriately. So it's showing a range of dates there, and that's going to help our users search. So if they want to search for something that's anywhere in that range, it'll come up in the range. So I'll just say submit there. So now we have a creation by me. The event was the creation of the photograph, and there's the dates. Physical description area. So again, this is meant for you to fill it out just like you would a RAD description in any kind of other finding aid context or whatever. So for now, this collection has one digital photograph. So that's what I'm going to put here. It's not a published thing, so I'm going to skip that area. I'll put in a little bit about the archival description area here. So you can have, of course, your custodial history transferred to the archives by Sarah Romkey. You can have your scope and content consists of photographs of Joan Jett, who is a rabbit. And let's create this. Obviously, you can go through all of the areas that you need to, all of your notes, all of your standard RAD fields, as many of those as you choose to fill out can be there. So now I have a collection record. I'm starting my description hierarchy here. So I can, and from here, I should have made a child record. Let me, if I go and reload it, does it give me my child record? I'm remembering that this was maybe a bug that I encountered at some point recently. In any case, if I have a child record that I want to attach to this, I can do it in a couple of different ways. If it didn't work making my child record as I made my collection record. So I have a photograph I want to add to this. I can click on Add New, which is one way of doing it. I can also, because I do have a digital photograph that I want to add, I can do that by saying link digital object. And you may have noticed that there's also an option to import digital objects, plural. I'm going to show you that in a second too. And then you get to see pictures of my dog. So to upload a digital object, which is what I'm going to do, by the way, there's also the option to link to an external digital object. So this just needs to be a URL that ends in the file extension. So it has to be images or videos or what have you that you're have in some cloud space or on like a publicly available server or something like that. It can't be password protected. It can't be in a repository in such a way that it doesn't end in the file extension. But that's an option for you as well. I'm not sure actually if any Archeion users do that or if typically folks are uploading to the site. We do know that lots of you, I don't know if you on the call, but lots of you in your organization do import digital objects directly to the Archeion site. So that's the way I'm going to do it. I'm going to find my digital object here. There is the rabbit. She's sideways. We'll see if it corrects that. I corrected my dog photos, but I forgot to correct my rabbit photo. I'm going to click open there, and we're going to create. It's just taking a second here. All right. So, oh, and I did this wrong, actually. I apologize. I meant to create it under the item. There's my item. Remember, I created an item? There it is. This is what we call the curse of the live demo. When you're trying to do something, it doesn't happen the way you expect it to, and then you have to explain yourself in a live demo situation, which is the situation I find myself in now. So I made a mistake here. I meant to create a new archival description for this. What I've done is I've attached my digital object to my collection record. So that's no problem. I can edit the digital object. I can delete it. And I can go back to where I actually wanted to put it, which was in the child record. So I'm just going to basically do that process again. There's the sideways bunny. And there she is. I had created this as sort of a stub record as I was creating my collection level record. I could go in and add more detail if I wanted to. So for example, I might want to go in and add some access points here. I might want to add a name access point. So the subject of this is Jet, who does not have an existing authority record. Her full name is Joan Jett, not to be confused with the singer. So we'll specify that she's a rabbit. I should add the caveat that I'm actually not sure if that's the proper way to do this in terms of controlling lists of names. I haven't been a collections archivist in a long time, but I'm going to save it like that. And you can all tell me if I've done something that you wouldn't do in your institution. Probably you're not describing rabbits all that often. But here I now have a new access point here, and I have Joan Jet, comma Joan Rabbit as a subject of this photograph. What I can do now is I can click on that, and it brings me to the authority record for Jet. Here she is, authority record. So now I can edit this record and fill out any information that I want to. So she's I guess the closest thing is a person. We'll call her a person. And we can give her a description that actually is her dates of existence. She was born in 2022, as far as I know. Found abandoned in Bridgewater and adopted to a family in Lunenburg is her history. So now, you know, and you can there's ways to create, you can create relationships to related to other corporate bodies, persons, or families. For example, I could make her relationship to me, because there's a record for me as the collector, other resources and so on. But I'll just save some little basics for her there. So now we have an authority record where we didn't have one before. So this is all to say that as you're creating your description, which is really, I think, kind of the core of the work that you're doing in AtoM, like particularly in the Archeion context, you can create these external entities such as the authority record, a new place name, a subject, and so on, without having to go in and edit those taxonomies directly. It links them automatically. So now if Raven's collection ends up with pictures of Jet, the rabbit, she can relate them to the same authority record. I'm sure that happens all the time between archival institutions where you have either a split font where things are created by the same person or organization but held in two different archival repositories, or you have you know, in one institution it's the person is the creator of something that you have, but in another institution it's the subject of an archival material that another institution has, and so on. So this way you can share authorities across your institutions, and from your users' point of view, they get a much clearer picture of how all of this archival material relates to each other. So hopefully AtoM helps you do that. And the best way to do that is to keep a nice clean database and to try to always search for entities and click on them to add them to your record rather than typing it all out, which may result in the creation of a duplicate, which is what you saw when I saw my own name come up twice, which I obviously, you know, did a bad job of doing something at some point in time in this database. So for my final part of my demonstration, and I'm just checking on my own time here, I have a couple of minutes. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to go back to I can browse the archival descriptions. Usually this will come up with things created most recently. So it's the easiest way. It's one easy way for me to find the dog collection. And I'm going to show you what it looks like when you import more than one digital object. So what's going to happen here is we're going to add two pictures of the dog, whose name is Lemon. And we can give it a title. So I can call them both Lemon, and then this is a sort of a placeholder that'll just add an incremental number and choose a level of description. So I'll choose item, but you could theoretically make them files or something else. Maybe the picture is just a representation of more material or something. I'll click upload. When I tested this, this only took a few seconds, so hopefully that'll be true this time and we won't have to wait too long. And AtoM's just doing some work in the background to get them all set. And there we go. So now we can do a little bit more editing if we want. My name didn't stick for some reason, so I will add the names there again and save. And here we go. So now this is showing the hierarchy of the collection is the dog collection and the two items, because you'll recall that I mentioned a digital object, an archival description can only have one digital object attached to it. So when I attached them to the collection level record, what it's done is created two items below it so that I have a separate description for each item. And then I can go in and flesh this out with more detail if I want to. So there's Lemon sitting on the couch being cozy by the fire, and there's Lemon in her new shoes. So, you know, if I have some important archival description that I want to add to those, I can. I will now stop my share and pass the mic back over to Raven. Hopefully that was helpful. Collections, excuse me, questions are welcome at any time. Feel free to pop them in the chat, and we can also take them at the end.
Oh, Raven, you're muted.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Kelly. Can you see my screen all right?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So in this next section, we'll learn a bit about general browsing capabilities, how search works in AtoM, and the advanced search interface. I'm going to go through these slides fairly quickly, but I'll also demo everything at the end. So first, I'll talk about browsing a little bit. So in AtoM, the Browse By menu appears on the left side of the home page. Looks like the screenshot here to the right, and it's situated next to the global search box. And this is a drop-down menu with several options for selection. Most browse functions are available for all users, so that's authenticated or logged in users and public logged out users. However, some browsing options are only available to authenticated users, such as donors and accession records. If you have the appropriate permissions, I think in this case it would be the administrator of Archeion, these browsing defaults that you see here, these labels can also be either removed or renamed via the site settings. Browse results pages themselves, so those are the pages that show up once you click on one of those options that we saw in that drop-down, have some default presets meant to make searching easier for users. So results will be sorted alphabetically. Only top-level descriptions are displayed. List view is automatically selected as opposed to card view, and the advanced search box is collapsed for better viewing. Additionally, it's also worth mentioning that the default sort order for results will be different for public users than it is for authenticated users. So for public users, the automatic sort order is alphabetically, but for authenticated users, results are sorted by most recently updated or by date modified. However, using the sort filter that's located to the right above the page results, users can change the sort order to either most recently updated, to sort by the identifier, reference code, or the start and end date. Like I mentioned on the previous slide, when arriving on the archival description browse page, a top-level description filter is engaged by default. This means that all results shown are parents with or without children, but without any higher levels of description above them in the hierarchy. Users can disengage this filter if they want by clicking on the X that's to the right of the filter tag. And there's also an easy way to limit results to the descriptions of a particular archival unit, for example, a phone or collection, or to the holdings of a particular repository. AtoM has facets available here on the search browse page for these, which you can see to the left-hand side of the picture. The global search box is located in the static AtoM navigation bar that is present across all AtoM pages, no matter where you are, including the home page. When you start typing your search query into the global search bar, it will show an autocomplete or type ahead result from a number of possible matches using a drop-down menu. These search box autocomplete results are organized into categories or facets that you can select from, such as archival descriptions, authority records, archival institutions, and so on. These type-ahead search results are a really useful navigational tool for quick searching of multiple entity types. However, it's important to note that if you do enter a search query and then you hit enter after, you will only return results for archival descriptions. If you want to search for a different entity type, such as an authority record, you must click it when it originally appears from this drop-down menu here. Or you can use the browse by pages, like I said earlier. AtoM supports various Boolean operators, including and, or, and not, in addition to the use of wildcards and other special characters to improve your search results. And I'll circle back to these a bit later when we discuss advanced search. By performing a search via the global search box, so again, that search box at the top of your nav bar, AtoM will return global results from all repositories. However, if an organization has multi-repository support enabled, like Archeion, you can also use a radio button to toggle between a global search setting, which will search all repositories, or only results from the holdings of the last repository that you visited on the site. So by default, when multiple search terms are entered into the search box, AtoM will search them using the AND operator. For example, this means that a search for Canadian Art Club will return results for Canadian and Art and Club, appearing in any field. If you don't want this AND operator to be applied by default, it's possible to search for an exact phrase in the order you entered the query by using the quotation marks. For example, a search for Canadian Art Club in quotation marks would return records that contain those terms together in exactly that order. And then I'll also just note that AtoM omits certain stop words from searches. Stop words are very commonly occurring words in a particular language that are often removed from search indexes during processing to produce better results and performance. So some common English stop words that are removed from search indexes in AtoM include and, at, be, on, that, the, with, and so on. AtoM currently uses something called Elasticsearch as its search index. And then in Elasticsearch, certain characters are reserved to be used as operators while advanced searching, which I've added to this slide for reference. I'm calling this out because if you need to use any of these characters in your search query itself and not as an operator, you will need to do something that's called escaping them. Escaping a character just means that you're telling the search box to treat a character as plain text rather than as an operator. You can escape a character by entering a leading backslash directly after it. And you can see here from the example what an escaped search for this mathematical equation would look like. If you fail to escape these special characters correctly, it could lead to syntax errors, which prevent your query from running. So it's important just to be aware of them. In addition to AtoM's general search box, AtoM also includes a robust advanced search interface that allows users to build complex queries. And the advanced search panel is available on all archival description search and browse pages, and it's currently designed to be used for searching only archival descriptions. Other entity types can be searched by using dedicated search boxes that exist on relevant entity type pages, which I'll show you during our demo. So the Advanced Search Query Builder provides a graphical interface for building complex Boolean search queries, in addition to supporting wildcards and other special characters. So this is just a snippet of what the Advanced Search panel looks like, and I'll show you during the demo what this looks like a bit closer up. But you can use the drop menu to limit your search query to a specific field in the archival description templates, like title, scope and content, creator, and lots of those fields that Sarah showed us earlier. The labels that appear in the field drop-down menu are based on the edit template that you're using, like RAD. And then if no field is selected here, the default will just be to search for any field. The Advanced Search panel also provides two options for limiting results, either by repository or by top-level description, and only one of these limiting options can be used at a time. If the multi-repository setting is enabled, you can select a repository from the drop-down menu to return only matching results linked to the holdings of the selected repository. The top-level description option is an autocomplete field that will populate with all of the top-level descriptions that are held in AtoM. You can start by typing in to see matching results and clicking on one to select it. And this will return matching results limited only to archival descriptions that are found within the chosen top-level description's descendants, or in other words, its children. You can also add various filters to your search to limit the results to specific parameters. I won't go through these in a lot of detail, but you can limit the search to a specific level of description, like phone or collection. You can use the digital object available filter to limit results to only those with or without a digital object. And you can also limit results to those with or without a finding aid, and even specify what type of finding aid you would like to search for. You can also filter by copyright status, such as public domain or under copyright, or by general material designation, both of which Sarah showed us a bit earlier. So this would be things like object, moving images, or electronic record. And then this latter filter contains controlled vocabulary drawn directly from RAD. That's the general material designation filter, so it depends specifically on the use of the RAD description template. And then finally, you can also filter by date range. This section will allow you to search against the internal start date and end date values associated with an archival description, not the display date, which is what public users see on description view pages. So dates follow the year, month, day format, and you can enter text directly into the fields, or we also have a graphical date widget picker that you can use. So if you look just at the bottom of the screenshot to the right, here's just a quick reminder of what those internal start date and end date values are. The display date, in contrast, can be entered typographically to represent uncertainty or approximation, and it's what the public user will see. There are two possible ways of searching dates with this filter, which I'll just quickly highlight. And they are called overlapping, which will be the default selection, and exact. You can use the radio button toggle to the right to toggle between the two options. The exact option means that the start and end dates of the descriptions returned must fall entirely within the date range entered, and the overlapping option is a more inclusive search. It means that any description whose start or end dates touch or overlap the target date range will be returned. And then just before we move on from date range searching, I'll just show you a couple examples of what this looks like. So here's an example of the results that would be returned if we input a closed range. So both a start date and an end date, and then we selected the overlapping option. A search for a range from 1950 to 1970 would return descriptions with all of the following green dates that you see in this graph. So you can see that it's pretty broad and inclusive in what results are returned. It will return dates that both start earlier and later than our target date range if there is any overlap that happens at all. And here's the exact same search query with the same closed date ranges, 1950 to 1970, but with the exact option selected instead. So we can see that the exact option is much more strict in terms of the results returned. Because the records must fall exactly within the specified parameters, only 3 results have actually been returned, shown in green there. I won't get into any more detail on this today, but results for both overlapping and exact searches will also vary if you use an open range instead of a closed range, which just means that either a start date or end date is included, but the second date is left blank. And then just before we get into our demo, I'll briefly return to our favorite Boolean operators. In AtoM, Boolean search operators are supported both in the search box and the advanced search menu, so you can use them in both places. When using advanced search, they can be combined with other filters and facets to further refine results. The most common ones, which I touched on earlier, are and, or, and not. So you can use and to combine search terms to narrow your search. You can use or to combine search terms to broaden your search. And you can also use and not to exclude terms. Like you can see from this screenshot in the bottom left here, Boolean operators can also be combined and built upon, but I'll just quickly note that there is a default precedence built into how Elasticsearch will handle them. So the operator not will take precedence over the operator and the operator and will take precedence over the operator or. However, you can use parentheses to group clauses as you need and combine operators. In addition to those 3, there's also lots of other Boolean operators available for use in AtoM, like the quotations at the top of this table for exact matching. I will not go over all of these today because we would be here for quite a while, but this table is documented online in our user manual for easy reference. With that, I'll jump into a demo of everything that I just went over. All right, so here is the homepage of my AtoM demo site. The first thing that I'll point out is this global search bar at the top here, which allows you to search across the application. It also includes that autocomplete feature that I mentioned. So if I start typing something, results should appear underneath, as we can see. So as you type, related results will be organized by entity type in this dropdown. So you can see here we have results from archival descriptions, institutions, authority records, and so on. So you can now have the option to select from any of these. But if we type the entire query and then hit enter, I'll search for Ontario there. This will only bring up results for archival descriptions. So if you do want a result from another entity type, you can go to a browse by menu, which I'll show you a bit later. So if I go back to the home page now, in addition to this global search bar, I mentioned this browse by dropdown menu earlier, but we also actually have this browse by table listed to the left here as well. And this will allow users to quickly get to all of the main entity types in AtoM. We have the same browse menu available here, and this one will be available throughout the AtoM website on whichever page that you're on. Underneath, you'll also notice this popular this week widget. This widget will display the top 10 most popular results based on number of visits for archival institutions, authority records, and archival descriptions. So now let's go ahead and look at our archival descriptions browse page, and I'll just get to it by clicking this link right here. When you first land on an archival description browse page, there's a top level description filter that is turned on by default. It's right here, this filter tag. And you can just turn it off by clicking the X if you want. And then over here on the left is what we call facet filters. Using these facets, you can quickly filter your results to see what you want. So let's say you only wanted to see a certain level of description. Here at the bottom, I'm going to select phone, for example. You can simply click on it, and then it will limit your results to only the phone level description. This can be quickly removed again by removing the filter tag up here. I also wanted to highlight that we also include an easy way to see digital object content, meaning uploaded images, text, audio, video, and so on. So you can just click this tag here, which says show results with digital objects. And we can see now that we only have results with those that are attached. Again, we can quickly X out of this up here if we want. And then in the top right here, above these results is where we have some sort options available. So you can sort by anything, by any of these that you want. To perform an advanced search, you can expand this advanced search options area right here. Just by clicking on it, you can expand it. And we can see all of the options that I mentioned during our slides. Our first advanced search option available to us is to find results within a specified field. So we have this field dropdown over here. The default is to find results with any field, but if we open up the dropdown menu, we can see all of these options. We can also add multiple criteria and build a more complex search by using this add new criteria tag over here. For example, I could build something like the following for my search. Let's say I want to find, I'm still looking for descriptions about Ontario, so I could go ahead and type that in here. But I might also want to include results that contain that maybe have the term art club in it. So I could go click add new criteria. I'm going to say and because I also want them to contain this. And I'm going to use art club in quotation marks so that it searches for that exact string. You can then limit your results by either a repository or top level description. Like I mentioned, you can only select one of these. I'm going to search by repository in this case, and I'm going to select the Art Gallery of Ontario. So it will only return results that are from the Art Gallery of Ontario. Next, I can add a date range filter down here. For my query, let's say I'm only really interested in results after or around the year 1900. So I can go ahead and punch that in. And then I'll just leave my end date open. Very quickly, we also have this level of description drop down over here. Let's say, for example, I want to limit my search to phone only. I can go ahead and select one. When you've entered all of this information that you hear, you've made it as broad or as narrow as you want. You can go down to the bottom of the search box and you can hit search on the right here. And this will bring you to the results of your query. Results on this page will appear in order of relevance. We can see that I only have one match here for the Canadian Art Club phone. However, if there were more than 10 results, there would also be a pager at the bottom of the page so that you could see more pages of results. While we're here, I'll just point out the description between a filter and a facet. Like we saw in the advanced search panel, we can select multiple filters at once. The facets, however, are the ones that we see on the left-hand side here. So there's two here that pop up, and these are unique. For example, you can only really apply one facet at a time for each of these categories. Then if you want to reset your search completely, you can just go to the bottom of the advanced search panel and you can click reset, and that will clear all of those fields. Next, I'll show you an archival institutions browse page. So I can get to that by using this browse drop down here and clicking on archival institutions. So currently we have our demo set up in a multi-repository environment. So we've added descriptions for many different institutions here. In AtoM, the archival institutions browse page includes a tile-based feature where users can upload logos. When there's no logo present, it will just show the name of the institution. And you can toggle this between card view like it's currently on, or table view if you find that a little bit easier. And then from this browse page, we also include the search box at the top. So you can use this to search only for archival institutions. So like I said, if you are using the global search box, you enter something and then you hit enter, that will only show archival descriptions. So these browse pages are a good way to find results within those other entity types. So I'm going to search for the Yukon, for example, so I can punch that in there. And then I'll go ahead and click on it. And it will bring me to their institutional page. And from this page, when a user views a linked archival description or an archival institution record, the search box delimiter will default to search that archival institution. So I'm talking about this search box here. So if I use this will be searching the Yukon's archive specifically and not everything that's available on AtoM. So I could search for punch and mining, for example. And this will bring me to this results page. And we can see that there's a Yukon Archives filter tag at the top now. That's telling us that we're only viewing results from this institution. You can easily X out of that if you want again by clicking the X. And we'll go through all of these browse pages in detail, but you can go to the authority records browse page, which is also labeled as people and organizations here. And you can sort the results again from here. And we also have a dedicated search box at the top here if we just want to search for authority records. And then finally, I'll just highlight these two, the subjects and places browse pages, because these look a little bit different in AtoM. I'll click on subjects for today's purposes. And subjects and places are two different kinds of terms which are managed via taxonomies, which Sarah briefly showed you earlier. And both of these can also be used as access points associated with archival descriptions and authority records. And public users can browse terms. And they can also see the count available with these terms in these columns here. By clicking this cog, you can also search by all labels, the preferred label, which is the authorized form of the name of the term, or if you use the use for label, that's just searching for any alternate labels that have been added. And when we click on a subject term that has been related to an archival description, and the places works the same way. The results are presented. I'll click on Art here. You can see all of the results here. And I just wanted to click on this to highlight that if there is a translation of the subject term, this one actually doesn't have one, so I'll find one that does. Let's try arts and culture. Yes, if there is a translation of the subject term, you can easily flip the interface to see those results in French. So you can see here that we can see these in French if we want. And then lastly, you may have noticed this paperclip icon as we've been browsing around next to archival descriptions. So this icon will appear on all archival descriptions, search, and browse results. If you click on it, you can add the result to something that we call the clipboard. And you can see we can access it via this clipboard icon in the main navigation bar. And this is where you can go to view records later or perform further actions on them, like exports. Okay, so very, very quickly, I'll just highlight a couple tips and tricks to finish off our session today. Firstly, AtoM does have a user inactivity time limit. So by default, AtoM will automatically log you out of the application if you're inactive for 30 minutes. You saw that happened to me earlier during my first demo and I was very confused. So this is just a security measure in case you accidentally leave a logged in browser session open. However, it does also mean that if you spend too long working on a single record without saving, your data will be lost. So when you try to save, AtoM will instead direct you to a login page instead. To prevent this from happening, we recommend saving your work periodically as you go instead of adding a bunch of data and then not hitting save for a long time. As a little bonus tip, many browsers do offer free extensions or add-ons that can automatically save web form data, like AtoM's edit templates as you work, and also recover it if it's lost. I haven't personally tested any of these, so I can't recommend any extensions myself, but you can always look into it if you're interested. Through something called crosswalking, you can also preview data in another standard without having to edit anything, simply by adding a semicolon and the standard's abbreviation to the end of its URL. So the URL in the screenshot here might actually be a little hard to see. Sorry about that. But here are the abbreviations you can use in this table on the left. And lastly, just a quick tip about searching. So we mentioned alphabetical sort earlier, but AtoM sort is actually not what we call a natural sort. In fact, doing a perfect alphabetical sort in a multilingual international application can be a bit difficult. Currently, AtoM sorting is what is sometimes called ASCII-betical, meaning it sorts based on the ASCII table pictured to the right of this slide. This means that capitalization, punctuation, accents, and other special characters will all affect the sort order. And I'll show you a couple examples of how this actually plays out in an AtoM search. So results with double quotes will always appear before letters. Numbers will appear after punctuation, but before letters. Spaces will also affect the sort order, and capital letters appear before lowercase letters. A few other examples of ASCII-betical sort that might not be super intuitive. Because capitalization matters, the result ZA, for example, ZA with a capital Z, would appear before aardvark because the Z is capitalized, but the A in aardvark isn't. Numbers without leading zeros would sort like the following: 1, 10, 100, 11, 2, etc. So if you're using numbers in your description titles and you want them sorted in a particular order during searches, then using leading zeros where applicable could help. Also, leading spaces will affect the sort order, and accented characters will sort later than non-accented ones. So that's the end of the tips and tricks and as our session as a whole. I think we have some time for questions, but I'll quickly just highlight that we have some relevant documentation listed on the slide here. I think we'll be sharing these slides out, so you'll have access to that. We also have some more resources listed on the next slide here as well. And with that, I think we can open it up to questions.
Thank you so much, Sarah and Raven. I also just put some links in the chat. Today was about AtoM as a platform. There's also another session specifically about using Archeion in the context of our community use of AtoM. And that's going to be on March 6th. So I put that in the chat. Yeah, but if you have any questions, feel free.